Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Chaf. We are going to begin on Chaf Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisan. Matzah igrois shum. Let's say, as we've been discussing in this parak, a person finds various documents. What if one of them is an igros shum? Rashi says, Chishomu based in nichse loivlo malva b'chayvo. It's a document for based in which is evaluating property for seizure. For that matter, let's say you find V'igros Mazoin, says Rashi, Shekibulav Lozones Bas Ishto. Do you accept it upon yourself to provide mazonos for your wife's daughter, namely your stepdaughter? If you find a document which is a Shtari Chalitza, which of course we understand, Chalitza is instead of Yibum, or Me'unin, Miyun, which is discussed at great length, which we saw many times in Yavamas, but Rashi reminds us of it for some reason. This is the Katani Saima Shehisia Ima Yachel Ladaita. So normally we say, as Beat in the Satisha said, that the daughter gets married by the father, Minatayra. However, there is a concept of a katana being able to get married off by her mother or brother. And if she wishes, she could leave the marriage, and the marriage ceremony, the leaving is miyun. Rashi says, "V'ensricha get." She doesn't need a get. Elwa omeres b'fnei shloisha I avshi b'ploini baili. I don't want to be married to this guy. The kaisim lo abesin shtar shmi aina b'fneihem l'yoisla eda shmuteres linase. Which basically is a shtar which says that she can marry whomever she wishes. So you find that document, or V'shitri Birurin. Now, what are Shtari Birurin? So Rashi says B'gemar Mefarish, which is unfortunate because this is actually a question, which is going to be TA 20. Matzah Shtari Birurin, Ma Shtari Birurin. So the Mishnah doesn't explain it. We'll have to get to that into the Gemara. V'chol Ma'aseh Beis Harizeh Yachzer. Any type of document which is connected to Beis Din, so you can give it. Harizeh Yachzer, says Rashi. The Lekel Mechash L'Shem Nimlach. We're not concerned maybe the person wrote it but changed his mind and never ended up giving it. The Beis Din Lo Kosvum Elo B'Davar HaMakuyim. There's no way the Beis Din would have written it unless it was verified. It actually was done. This actually took place. They would have written such a document. So, for example, Mian, they wouldn't have written such a shtar unless this woman actually did perform the ceremony. So you don't have to worry about the issue of paying back because there's no concept of piroyin over here. Okay, we have to understand that when we get through the different cases. All right, let's see the next part of the Mishnah. Matzah b'chfitza o b'deluskama. Let's say you found any of these stars, you found them in some type of container. So, in that case, tachrich shel shtaros, so let's say for that matter you find a roll of shtaros, or a guda shel shtaros, a bundle of shtaros, harizeh yachzer. Again, you're able to return them, says Rashi, because it's the davar sheish bo siman, which is going to kind of remind us of what's coming up, which is the second parak of El Metzia. It talks all about simanim. So, as Rashi says, Simin kishi amr habalam bekli kach v'kach motzayisam. So you can say, I found it in a particular type of a kli. So he's able to explain what it is. So therefore, if it has a simin, so then you can return it when they explain what it was. V'kama guda shel shtara. So he said, if it's in a bundle, then it's okay. But how big is a bundle? So the Mishnah says, shleish shikshum zebazeh. 3 documents, and they're tied one to the other. Okay. So again, the Gemara is going to discuss that a little bit more. If let's say you have 3 different malvas, 3 different lenders, but there's only one lova, right? It's only echad haloiva mishloisha, so then yachzer loiva, which seems pretty obvious. If all 3 of these documents, there's the common denominator is the borrower, then you should give it back to the borrower. It must be that those documents were lost by the borrower. Shloisha haloivin Mina echad yachsel malva. If it was the other way around, let's say there's one malva and three different people that were lent to, so then you should give it to the lender. Obviously, it was dropped by the malva. So if you have the common denominator that it's all the same lova, give it to the lova. If it's the same malva, then you give it to the malva. There's three. Matzah shtar bin shtaroisav. Let's say you find a star among staros, but you don't know its status. Says Rashi, Shema miksaso parua. Maybe some of it was paid off. It was maybe given to a third party or something like that. So we just don't know whether or not what the deal is with this star. So then, since we're not sure, munach. So we say hey munach ad shiav eliyahu. In this situation, we are not allowed to return it lo zeh not to either party. Im yesh imahen simpoinos yasema sheba simpoinos. If it has some type of a receipt, then you should do whatever is on the receipt. It says Rashi, if you have a receipt, that means that the star was paid off. Even if it was in the hands of the borrower, that he's trustworthy. Tomorrow he'll give it to me and he forgot to. Okay. So my story berurin. So now we're gonna finally get to TA 6. What are story berurin? So hacha tirguma story tanasa. This is referring to a star of some type of claim. This is TA 6. What exactly does that mean? So Rashi doesn't really get into it. Rabbi Yomi Omer zeh boirer loy echad v'zeh boirer lo echad. So which is also known as a zabla, because its breakup of the zabla is based on zeh borer lo echad, zabla. Kishiboyer lehen dayanim kaisel hem zeh bir lo as ploini. You choose one guy for the court, v'zeh bir lo as ploini. The other party will choose someone else. Shel yuchel asmehen. So therefore, basically, what ends up happening is it demonstrates who is able to be chosen. So again, it's either Shtari Tanas, a document which has various claims, or Zeh Bar Lo Echad, Zeh Bar Lo Echad are known as a Zabla. Okay. All right. That was TA 6. And unfortunately, I got the first part wrong, but it's either Shtar Tanasa or a Zabla. B'chol Masi Beis Har Zeh Yachzer. Sahu Gita, Dishtachach Beidina de Rav Huna. So there was this particular get that was found in this Beis Din, and it was a verified document. Dahavik Sibbe, and it was written B'Shviri Masa, in this particular city, Del Rochis Nahara, by this particular river. So it was very specific in its location. And the shliach said that it fell from me. So Rav Huna says, the Gemara in Chaf Omid Beis, Chayshinan l'shnei shvirei. So he said, we saw this before, that we could be concerned that Afal Pi, Shibishviri Hayadu Lanu, that when it comes to this particular city, Ein Ba Shnei Yosef and Shimon, there is no second person with the same name. Shema Yeshvir Acher Sheshem Yosef and Shimon. Maybe there's another city which in some other place, like for example Springfield, right? So Springfield is in basically every city in the United States is a Springfield. So okay, there's no Yosef and Shimon in Springfield, which we'll translate as Shvire, but that's only the one in Massachusetts. But maybe in Springfield, Illinois, there is a Yosef and Shimon. So maybe we're chayshid. V'sham nichtav umashliach acher nafal. Maybe someone else, it fell from someone else, and this therefore it's a problem, and therefore you shouldn't give it back. So Amar Rav Chistel, Rabba Puk, Ayin, go investigate and look at this matter, which is mamash we saw this before. Dil Urta Boil Rav Huna Minach. He asked a question. Nothing. He went out. Dak v'ashkach, and he found did not our Mishnah. It says Kol Ma'aseh Beis Din Har Zeh Yachzer. It says that you couldn't give it back. It says Rashi, Givan D'lo Huchsach Shnei Yosef ben Shimon Be'ir Achas. Since you don't have two people with the exact same name in the same city, Some other city we don't even know much about. We don't know any other person. We don't know if there is another person in that city. We're not going to be chayshish, and therefore you should give it back. How could you learn out from there Isser from Mamoin? Our Mishnah is talking about dinim of Mamoin, of Mamonis. Okay, fine. So there's a din Hefker based in Hefker. Even if you made a mistake, based in could always just do this. However, we're talking about Gittin over here. So maybe in this situation we should be more strict. Armulei Tarda Shitri Chalitzo Miyunin Tanan. I don't understand. So says Rashi, Tarda Mishuamom, which is a derogatory language, like someone who's mentally deranged. What are you talking about? It says Chalitza Miyun. Our Mishnah doesn't just talk about Dini Moment, it talks about Dini Surim. So Paka Arza de Beirav. So he broke the pitcher, says Rashi, Nishbar Ha'omud, Shabesa Medrash Nishan Alav. The pillar, there's another base medrash, but he broke. Mar Omer Mishum did Litai Didi Paka. Some say because of the, says Rashi, Bishvil Mazali, because of his mazel, Shikine al Shigidiftani, it broke because of like his own mazel, that this is how it broke. Umar Sabi Mishum Litai Didi Paka, says Rashi, Hashavasal Devarai Levaisheni Bebeis Medrash, because I was like embarrassed in the base medrash. Either way, this thing broke. But the point is that apparently this is pretty clear. So that it's our Mishnah also says Harizel Yakser rather. You could give it back. Taisus over asked Posha the Kashi in terms of Tfei Anan Machmirin Mamamoina. Sometimes we're more strict when it comes to money than Isser. Da'in anu holchem b'mamon achar roiv. So it's interesting, just because it's true that maybe by Isser we find this, maybe it applies by Mama, not by Isser, but we actually find the opposite. We find actually in some places that we're more strict when it comes to money than Isser. So, Ein Taisus. Okay. That's an interesting question. Maybe one could learn Isser from Mamoin or vice versa. Okay. All right. Matzah b'chvitza o b'deluskama. Let's say you find it in one of these kalim. So my chvitza, some araba barchana, chemas katana. It's some type of jug, which is small. My deluskama, some araba barshmul, telika detzabe. Says Rashi, taska. It's some type of vessel where older people put in private, or they hide certain things in it. They don't, so not to have to look after them, etc. Okay. Anyway, it's some type of a kli, and therefore, if it was in there, so then you can return it, because that's a siman tachar shel shtaros or guda shel shtaros or talking about kamahu tachrech shel shtaros. So it said in our Mishnah already, it said that if you have a roll of shtaros or a bundle of shtaros, then you could return it. And the good of shtaros is 3 kishurin zebazeh. They're tied to one another. So on this, the Gemara continues. Tanabanan kamahu tachar shel shtaros shloisha kruchim zebazeh. 3 of them which are rolled together. The kami higudah shel shtaros shloisha kishurim zebazeh. 3 which are tied together. So shmamina kesher siman. Obviously, we see from here that a knot is a siman, says Rashi, sheish ksharim she'enim daim zolzeh, because some knots are not alike. Hatani Rabbi Chia shloish kruchim zebazeh. If you have 3 documents that are rolled together, ihachi hainu tachrich. So, what exactly is that referring to? It sounds like the same thing as it being rolled together. So, tachrich kol echad to tachrich. So when it comes to tachrich, each one is rolled by its friend. In other words, each one is rolled over the previous one. Not that they're all rolled together. Aguda is the Ramo Hadadi. You put all three flat, 1, 2, 3, and then you roll it like that. So that is the difference. As opposed to you roll one, and then after you've completely rolled one, then you take the other one and you start rolling it that way. So that's the difference between these two different types of rollings. Either you put all three together, then roll them together, or you roll one and then you roll the next one on top of it. Okay. So tacha kol chad v'chad b'roisha dechavrei, and aguda derama hadadi. Kruchos my machris. The question is, when we're dealing with kruchos, what exactly are you announcing? If it's a siman, so what do you need to find out so that person, you'll know that these stars belong to these people? So minyan, you should the number. You should say, it says gimel shtaros, 3 shtaros, and then the person wants to give a siman, and they'll say, oh, those 3 stars are rolled together. So my ira talasa filo treinami. Why 3 documents, even if they're 2, since the only thing that matters is it's the way it's rolled. So then why is it 3? You can even be a case of 2 that are rolled this way. El kadiyama ravina tiva machris hachanami shtori machris. He doesn't announce the amount. Only he says, I found documents. So he needs to say how many and how they were rolled together. Says Rashi, shtaros matsasi. I found shtaros. V'zesar shemer kach v'kach hayu, this much, ukruchim hayu, and they were rolled in a particular way. Hilchach davka tlos, has to be 3. Avotrei, says Rashi, 2, made the idea the mute shtar shtaim. If you say, I found shtaros we already know is minimum 2, so there's no chiddush. In minyan siman, so if you say 2, that's not a siman because shtaros pashit sounds like 2. It's the very least it's 2, so it seems like a person could just say 2. So therefore, the number is not necessarily enough. You have to say the number and how it was rolled. Question 1. Tachar shel shtaros o aguda shel shtaros harazeh yaser. Be'elu simanim yaser l'divrei haMishnah. So either minyan, you have to say there's 40 of them rolled, right? 40 shtaros, or ritsuras hakricha. Hainu to be in tarti. You would need 2 if again you said shtaros. If we're dealing with suras hakricha, the way in which it was rolled. Okay. So let's see question TB7, which is pretty much the same thing. But let's see how I frame the question and the answer. So he says, Kama shtaros hem tachrach v'aguda, madua lo pachis. So shalosh mipnei haloshin shtaros ze muchach sheze shtayim, ve'en ze raya. Aval im b'shvil haderech sheshtar kruchos, like the manner in which they're rolled up, oz afilu shtayim, then even 2. Okay. All right. Interesting way I framed it. Okay. Weiter. Now, again, if let's say you find 3 of them, and they all these documents have the same person, the borrower's name. There's a borrower, and a borrower. They're all the same people. So give it to the lova. It must belongs to him. The Malavinin, who belongs to each of these separate lenders. Maboy Gabi Hadadi. Why are there 3 different lenders? Why are they all together? It must be they're together because the common denominator is the borrower. Therefore, you have to give it to him. So Dilma Likiminhu Asli. Maybe it's just because they needed to be verified by Beis Din. No, the Bekaimi. We're referring to documents that have already been verified. Okay, Dilma Miyada the Safra Nafel. But how do you know? Maybe the scribe dropped them. So he said no. Lo Mashi Inish Kiyumi Biyada the Safra. Basically, such documents are not going to remain in the hands of the scribe for an extended period of time. Basically, a scribe will write a document, and once it's completed, he gets it out, like just-in-time inventory. He immediately gets it out, and therefore he's not going to be holding on to multiple documents like this. So therefore, the likelihood, again, is it probably came from the lova. It fell from the lova, so give it to him, the borrower. On the other hand, let's say the common denominator is all three documents. It's the malva. There's a lender that's all the same. These are the Lovenin who's the borrower, my boy Gabi Hadadi. Again, if there's three different borrowers, so why all these three documents together? So it's probably it fell from the malva. So we're asked, Dilma lemichtavinhu atzli. Maybe they were going to be written. There's maybe it's possible, as Rashi says, umina sefer nafal. Maybe it fell from the scribe, right? How do you know? Maybe it fell from the scribe. So diksivi betlas yedei safri. It's written with three different penmanships. In other words, there are three totally different scribes. So there's no way you could possibly say it came from the scribe, because the signatures, or the actual writing rather, clearly is from three different people. So again, maybe it was just to become verified. So malva mekayim shtari, loivel mekayim shtari. The malva is the one who's mekayim the star. The lova is not the one who's mekayim the star. Okay. So if you have a simpoin, for some reason it's Rashi here, not in the Mishnah, is a shoiver. It's referring to a receipt. Hamavatal star, which could be saying that whatever's on the star is batal, basically because you're saying that the star was paid off or whatever it was done. V'chol davar hamavatal davar kori simpoin. Anything that cancels something else out is called simpoin. Like it says in the first parak in Kedushin, Gabi Kedusha Isha, Umechiris Eved, Shahamum Kori Simpoin, Mimnei Shemavatal Es HaMekach. Interesting. So if let's say you have a woman who has a mum, so over there the Gemara said, we don't want her to eat truma, b'shas erison, because of simpun, which we said means because of a mum. So it's interesting, the language simpun does not necessarily mean a mum, but it just means something that could be mavatal, something else. So therefore, if a woman has a mum, so therefore it was a mekach tais. Why did she hide it and not tell her husband to be that she had whatever physical ailment? Okay, if she maybe told him, then maybe he would have been okay with it. But the fact that she was so secretive, it shows a lack of trust, and therefore that's not considered to be a marriage. That's not a marriage, and therefore it is mavatal the kedushin. And therefore, because of that, that's why it's called simpun. So to over here. Anytime we have a receipt, this is what a receipt does. A receipt cancels whatever is on the document. Amarav Yirmiyah Baraba, Amarav, Simpun Hayotz Matachas Yedei Malva. So Simpun, which is from the hand of the lender, Afal Pi Shekasab Iksav Yadoi, even if it's written his handwriting, Eno Ela K'Masachek Upasul. So we say it's like being masachek, like a joke, and it is not valid. So what does that mean? So let's look in Rashi. Shehu munach biyadai. If let's say the receipt is by him, v'lo biyad haloiva, not by the hands of the borrower. So typically what happens is that the malva has this document that says that he's owed money, and then when the lova comes, the lova will get the document, and the malva receives a shubur, some type of receipt. Am I saying it correctly? It's pumfakert. So the borrower, when he makes the payment, he gets a receipt so that he will not have to collect again. So the malva will not be able to taina that was never paid. So really, it's supposed to be biyad the loiva. So therefore, if you have a simpon hayotz metachas shnei malva, if it's in the hands of the lender, it's possible. Lomaboy kos ksav yad sefer, doesn't matter if it was written by a scribe. The equal memer safres ramule v'kosav, that it was just a pre-written document. Elafil kosav ksav yadai, even if it's in the hands of the malva apostle. Savar dilma masrami v'yasi ben ishmashus. Maybe this all took place like right before Shabbos for kaparli, and he paid me back. And therefore, again, it's possible he already paid me back, and since he already paid me back, that's it. So the receipt is not valid. Dilu yavina lei lo yoiv li zuzi, because if he would not have given him the receipt, he would never have given him the money. So he said, I'll write it. So that when he gives me money, I'll give it to him. So therefore the receipt is not valid. Tanan. How do we say receipts are not valid? We say clearly in the Mishnah, if you find a receipt, you do whatever it says. So Kedi Omer Rav Safra Shenimsa bin Shtaros Kiruyim. It's when the receipt was together with ripped documents. Hachiname Shematsu bin Shtaros Kiruyim. So what does that mean? So V'hu Enu Karua. So everything was ripped, but not the receipt. Lafikach Saimchen al Shuber. We're going to rely on this receipt. Shibamakam Hashtar Machiach. The fact that it's with all these other ripped documents, it's proof. Al Shuber Shu Emes. It must be this is a good receipt. Shimu Nifra, if he was not paid off, Lo Hayanaisen Ashtar Eitzel Ashtaros Karuyim, then it would not be together with all these other ripped documents. Okay, eyeing the rest of Rashi. So that's kind of like a raya, the fact that it's among ripped documents. Question number 2. Simpoin Hanimsa Eitzel Hamalve, that's found by the lender, because of Iksav Yado is written by the malva, the lender's handwriting. Him yasama shtar. Do you do whatever's on the star, or do you follow the receipt? So he says like this: Nimsa star or shuver ben shtaros of karuyim. If you find the star among other staros that are ripped, then you should follow whatever is on the receipt. Nimsa ben shtaros of hashlemim. But if let's say you would find the star together with other valid non-ripped staros, ein basim poin klum, then the receipt does not mean anything. So therefore, if this star is together with ripped staros, so that shows that this document is probably a good document, and therefore the sim point means nothing. It's not a good receipt. However, if it's if it's found and it's among good staros, then the simpon doesn't mean anything. So let me say that again. I may have said it wrong. If you find the star or the receipt among other ripped documents, then you should follow whatever is on the receipt. If it's found among good documents, then the receipt means nothing. Okay. Tashma. Nimsol echad bin shtaraisav. If let's say it was found, one receipt was found among other documents, shtar shel Yosef shel Shimon parua, that it says that the star of this person was paid off. That's what the receipt says. Shoshtaro shnehem peruyim, or it says that the two of them were paid off. Kinom Rav Safra shenimsa bin shtaros of karuyin hachanami shnimsa bin shtaros karuyin. So this is again what we said before, that if it's found, the receipt, among ripped documents, we're going to follow whatever's on the receipt. Tashma. Shvu shlo pakadnu abba. So this person makes a shvua, says Rashi is quoting the Mishnah in Shvuas. Yisaimim min ha-yisaimin lo yifru el b'shvua. When it comes to an orphan, from other orphans, you can only collect with a shvua. So he said, what is ma shvuasan? Shvua shlo pakadnu abba b'tzavas misa. That he didn't give us anything at the time of his death. Shlo armalanu koydem l'chein, didn't say anything to us about it. The shaloi matzinu shoiver bin shtaraisav shel abba al shtarzeh shepurua. It says we did not find a receipt between other documents of our father that it was paid off. Ha'im matzu. Let's say they did find a receipt among other documents. Samchinale. We would rely on the sim point. We would rely on the receipt. So that's this. So let's go back in the Gemara. Shvua shel pakanu abba shloi amrulanu abba v'shlo matzanu ben shtaraisav shel abba sheshtar zeperua. So Amrav Safra shenimsa ben shtarasav karuyin. Again, why would we rely on the receipt? It's because it was found among ripped documents. Tashma simpoin sheishalav edim yiskayim b'chaismav. It says if you have a receipt with witnesses, yiskayim b'chaismav. What does that mean? It says Rashi, of a kol kama delo mekayim. If you're not mekayim with the signatures, then it is believed. So Ema Yiskayim Mechaismav. What does that mean? As we continue to Chaf Amud Aleph, Dishalinin Luhu Tzahadi, that basically will ask the witnesses, Iparua Ilupurua, whether this was paid off or not. Says Rashi, Imro Hapiroin Vimlav. Did you actually see the payment or not? Tashma Simpoin Sheshulav Edim Kosher. If you have a receipt with witnesses, it's kosher. My Edim, Edi Kiyum. Actually, witnesses that saw the that it was authenticated by Beis Din. Because the Beis Din would never be Mekayim, would never verify a shtar unless it was already paid off. They wouldn't have written such a receipt. So Achanamim Stabra Mitani, it's also logical, Mitani Seifa, Vishenu of Edim Apostle. My Enel of Edim, Elim, the Lake Edim Kla, there's no witnesses, Srichel Meimer, the Apostle. Obviously, it's invalid. There's nothing to back it up. El Love Edikiyum. It just means that there are no Edikiyum. Goof, getting back. Simple Cheshel Love Edim Yiskam B'chaismav. You should verify with the signatures to see whether or not they saw that it was paid off or not. Enel of Edim, there's no witnesses, V'yotzim Atachashadei Shlish, and it's in the hands of a third person. Oh, Shiyotzil Achar Chitum Shtar is kosher. Or the receipt is on the bottom of the star, then it's kosher. Yotzim Atachashadei Shlish, it says if it was in the hands of a third person, Daha Hemnei Malva L'Shlish, because the lender trusted the third party. Yotzil Achar Chitum, if the receipt was on the bottom of the star, Shtaros Nami, the Ilav de Paria, if it wasn't paid off, Lo Havi Marle L'Shtari, he wouldn't have ruined the star by having it written on the bottom of it. Okay. Let's see. Question TA7. Sim point she'en mekuyim, v'lo nimsa shtar ben shtarosav pruyim hakruyim, belo fanim hu kosher v'loi magvinon. This is when we say that it is a kosher receipt, and therefore we're not going to collect umadua and why. So it says, O shiyatza mitachas idei shlish da himne. If let's say the receipt was found in the hands of a third party, o biyotzil achachisam shtaros, if it was on the bottom of a signed document, the ilav de paria, if it was this document was not already paid off, well, havi marlu shtar, they would never have ruined the shtar by having it written on it like this. That was TA7. So TA7, which again, sim sheshel of edim iskam b'chaisamav, ein olav edim v'yotzim atachas adei shlish, or sheyotzel acher chitum shtaros is kosher. As we said, because the ilav the paria loy havi marle l'shtari hanulach shtayim oichsin hanulach shtayim oichsin hanulach shtayim oichsin. Finish the first parak. We're not going to breathe, at least for a few times, maybe like a week, learning Metzia, which we'll see in tomorrow's daf. Adkan.